Episode 163, When Things Go Wrong, as They Sometimes Will. Welcome back to the One Extraordinary Marriage Show, where we talk about sex, love, and commitment. I'm Tony DiLorenzo.
And I'm Alisa DiLorenzo, and we hope that you all had a very special Easter holiday with your loved ones, friends, and family from near and far. We were blessed to be with Tony's family, and actually some of you, I don't know if you're friends with, if you see Tony's posts up on Facebook, some of you may have seen that he was able to reconnect with a childhood friend. Mm-hmm. We were out of town and had been invited to attend church with another high school friend of Tony's, and we get there, and the pastor of that church happens to be a guy that lived just down the street with him growing up. Yeah. So we're sitting there, and he's like doing the elbow poke going, I know that guy. And it was just a really special, it was a wonderful message there at Wildwood Calvary Chapel, and just really neat to see two guys that grew up together. Chris is a few years older than Tony, 4 or 5 years older than Tony, but just to see them afterwards be like, hey, I know you. Mm-hmm. You know, and just really just brought some special times to the day. And so,
yeah, God is good. And it was funny because we were there, like Alisa had said, one of my friends from high school just said, hey, you know, you're in the area, just come on up to our church. And I was like, sure. I don't look at the senior pastor or anything like that. You know, she was there, and I was like, cool, we know somebody, let's go. And it was probably midway through the sermon when Chris had mentioned how when he gives his license to people, especially when he is paying with something with his debit card or something they want to see for identification purposes, they'll look at his driver's license and they'll go, are you Chris Farley? You know, the actor, his last name is Fraley. And it was at that moment, and I don't know if you've ever had this, though, when this happens, when he said his name, Chris Fraley, I seriously I just looked up, and I'm looking at him, because we're probably halfway back in the church, mm-hmm. And I look at him, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I grew up a block away from this guy. I remember, this is sort of the crazy thing of the way God works sometimes in our lives. He's a pastor's son. His father was the Baptist pastor in our church, in our town. I grew up in a small town. He was that pastor. I was brought up Catholic, really didn't even attend church after the age of about 15 or 16. But I remember days hanging out in Chris's remade garage. His dad had redone the garage to make it into another room, where we would be listening to Def Leppard, and these guys would be rocking out on their drums and guitars, and I would just be sitting in there having a great time. His younger brother was 2 years older than me, so I knew him more. But like Alisa said, it's one of those things where, oh my gosh, I grew up with this guy. And then sitting there on Easter Sunday and him just doing a sermon off of John 11, mm-hmm. He did such a fantastic job. It was a great time to catch up with him afterwards.
And you know, it's amazing how you watch two guys that haven't seen each other for probably over 20 years.
Oh, it's been at least 20 years.
And you know, like in a heartbeat, the years just melt away. I mean, they start talking about silly stuff that they did as kids. And, you know, Chris remembers the whole sitting, listening to, you know, the bands and things like that. And it was just a really special time.
And you know what was cool that Alisa even brought up, I think is even more cool, that when we go to my folks, we typically don't attend church because we didn't know where to go. There's not much in my hometown that I would go to. And so the cool thing out of this is that we now have a church that's about 15 miles from my folks' place. So when we are up there for events or holidays, we can go. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that's cool for us. We can take the kids and, you know, we can spend some time there. It's not that far of a drive. And so that was the real cool thing about it.
And, like I said, I hope all of you had the opportunity to spend time with family to just really remember that Easter's about more than chocolate bunnies and Easter egg hunts, and to remember what Jesus did on that third day for you, for all of you. And I have to say, one of the things that Chris said in his sermon, and we posted it up on One yesterday, is that God's delays are not God's denials. And it really struck with me, and that's why we put that up yesterday on One.
That's on the Facebook.
It's on the Facebook page. Because I want you to remember, I know a lot of you are at, you're at all different places in your marriage. And some of you have been praying for answers. You've been praying for healing in your marriage. You've been praying for him to change, her to change, the situation to change. And you just feel like your prayers aren't being answered. And what I want to just tell you this morning is that God's not ignoring you. He's not. There's a reason, and you might not be able to see it now, but there's a reason that you haven't gotten the immediate gratification that our society says you need to have. So just hang in there today, because just like the title of the show, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, whether it's in your bedroom or in your marriage, things are going to go wrong.
Yeah. And they sometimes will. And we're going to get to that because we had one of those instances this weekend ourselves. But before we get to that, we have a couple of hugs from listeners that we want to share because we just love you guys so much and are so thankful for all you do. Right now, I just want to mention we got 98 4.5 star ratings on iTunes. Please, if you could just take a moment, if you haven't done so already, go to iTunes, click on a 5-star or a 4-star or whatever you believe this podcast has done for you. This just lets others know that, hey, this podcast has been a help to me. It has been a help to my marriage. And as I say that, we are the number 3 marriage podcast in iTunes. So, and that is a great and a huge thank you to each of you who do and have rated us and reviewed us. One of the first hugs we're going to read today is from iTunes, and it goes, "Start and finish here, 5 stars, by Mecom4. This podcast is amazing. Tony and Alisa are real about the ups and downs of marriage. If you need anything or want anything more from your relationship, join the One Extraordinary Marriage family. You won't regret it." With a happy smiley face. So thank you so much, Mecom4. And to each and every one of you that are here, that are part of the One family, you know that when you sign up for our newsletter at oneextraordinarymarriage.com/newsletter, you get our 77 questions to get the conversation started. We ask a quick question. We want to know what you want to do, how you want to blow up, make your relationship, your marriage better in the next 6 months. Many of you have done that, and you know you get an email from us. It may take us a little while to get back to you, but we get back to you because you are very, very important to us.
And, I just have to do a little shout out too, because we spoke last week at Faith Community Church at their MOPS group. Mm-hmm. And I just want to give a shout out to all of those ladies. They were an amazing audience. And I so appreciated their authenticity. After our presentation, as the morning was wrapping up, a number of them came and shared their stories with us. And it's always a blessing to us when we can come out to where you are, speak to your audience, and be able to connect with you afterwards. And, to all of those ladies, thank you for having us. Mm-hmm. The comments that we've received after the emails and Facebook posts and whatnot show that they got a lot out of us being there, but I always feel like we get so much more just in them sharing their lives with us. So Thank you, Faith Community Church MOPS group, for being part of our week last week.
Yeah. And now we have a voice message that came in, and you can also call in. You can let us know what you think about the podcast, how it's impacted you. All you got to do is pick up your phone, call 858-876-5663, and you can leave a message like this listener here did.
Call and say, I really took your taking the lead seriously, and I've been getting so much great feedback from your podcast. So tonight I took my boyfriend out, and we got food to go, and we went out to our favorite place by the beach, and we just sat and listened to music, which is what we used to do in the early days of our dating. And we've had hectic schedules and crazy lives, and we've been so busy lately that our date night even got canceled for this month, and I knew this was my last chance at a date night for the month. So we really took it seriously, and we even did it under $15, which is pretty impressive for us, because usually our date nights are pretty expensive. So I just want to say thank you for all the great ideas, and keep them coming. Bye, guys.
I love so many aspects of that voicemail. I love that they looked at the month and said, we're running out of days.
Yeah.
And if we're going to make it happen, we need to do it.
Take the lead. She took the lead on it.
She took the lead. And then, like I was sharing with these ladies at Faith last week, date night doesn't have to be crazy. It doesn't. I was talking to one woman there, very much like this gal, where she's like, we just did takeout and we sat by the beach. Living in San Diego, the beach is an option for us. If you don't live near the beach, go to a local park, go to, walk around. Sometimes walking around, some of you guys have got fabulous downtown areas. I know just because we know where you are, just go walk downtown. Some of you have historic areas. Just go walk in that space. Just be together. Sit in a park. People watch. Tell stories about the people that you're watching. I remember once we posted give us your date night ideas. And there was a couple that wrote in saying that they would go and they would people watch, and they would just make up stories about the people that were walking by, and they would entertain themselves that way. I'm like, it costs no dollars.
Right. And just because you're not by water, I mean, when Alisa and I lived in Spokane, Washington, little landlocked there. But there was Lake Coeur d'Alene.
We did. We went to Idaho. We were very close to Coeur d'Alene. So
we would go by the lake there. We were close to Montana. I remember one time on one of our anniversaries, we were taking off for a trip. And I love Montana because there's nothing there. And it's so different than San Diego and Southern California. But we pulled off the freeway.
Oh, yeah.
And I forget which freeway we were on. So somebody who lives up that way, you may remember. But we pulled off the freeway. We took a right-hand turn, turned into it. Seriously, it was pavement for all of maybe like not even a tenth of a mile, turned into dirt. And then there was the Lewis and Clark River, or the Clark River.
Oh, the river. Yeah, we've got pictures.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I mean, it was just this beautiful fall day. And right there, because it's fall, water's down. There's some cool sandbars in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. We were able to jump into the middle of the creek, the river, onto this sandbar. And we just hung out there and we had lunch. It was just so awesome. And because it's there and the water's just sort of rushing around us, we couldn't even hear the freeway. Mm-hmm. It was fantastic.
Isn't that the 90 that goes across there?
Sure. I don't remember, honestly.
Why that.
But there's an instance of us just going, you know what? Let's just stop. Let's just stop and enjoy what's here. And if there's one season that I love more than anything, summer is up there just because for cycling, it's awesome. You can get up at 5 a.m. and it's warm. But fall for me, that's when we got married. I love the change of colors, especially up in like Montana or these areas where you get the seasons. Again, we don't get that down here. So we cherish those when we're in other places.
Okay, I'm laughing because today's show topic is when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, and you bring up Montana.
And every trip we took to Montana, something would go wrong. I think we may have to share a couple of those stories.
Okay, well let's jump into.
Yes, we'll share a couple of those stories now that we got
Montana. Montana does hold a special place in our heart, but it's just, things always happened in Montana.
Yes.
So jump on in.
Let's jump on in. All right. So this weekend, Easter, we ended up celebrating on Saturday. My brother and sister-in-law, who typically have Easter for our family, just decided, hey, you know what? Just so we're not all rushing on Sunday, because again, Southern California, everybody's driving. So we had it on Saturday. Prior to getting up there, though, I'd ended up calling my folks and said, hey, you know what, guys? Would you guys be willing to watch Alex and Abby Saturday night? Alisa and I are going to just go grab a hotel, and and then we'll go do service on Sunday. My mom's birthday was on Easter Sunday, so we decided to go pick up the kids and then hang out with my mom, celebrate her birthday and all that. So it was at this time that we had left the family on Saturday and headed to our hotel in Ontario, California. So it's sort of like the Inland Empire area. And Alisa and I had packed something fun for us, which we had bought some time ago, and we were excited to try it out. And what it is, fluorescent paints.
Body paints,
fluorescent body paints. And we also had bought a blue a black light stick, fluorescent light stick. And, had the whole thing set up. It's battery, the stick itself, the black light is operated with batteries. And so we had packed that. So we were going, oh, it's going to be so much fun. That's going to be our fun thing on Saturday. Well, as you can imagine, 2.5 hour drive to my brother's. Getting to Ontario ends up being a little over an hour with all the traffic that we have to deal with. We finally get to Ontario, and there's a huge mall. It's called the Ontario Mills Mall, and our hotel butts up right against it. And one of our plans was, let's go walk around there. There's an improv comedy show right next to it. Maybe we'll go do that for dinner and have some fun. Well, we jump into the mall, and oh my gosh, it was like sensory overload. And at this time, it's probably about 6:30-ish.
6:30, 7 o'clock, yeah.
Yeah. We had lunch with my family around 1 o'clock. So we're a little like, oh, you know what? Maybe we can hold off. We'll get to the comedy show. So we hadn't had a lot of food. That can, if any of you can relate, when you start getting hungry and sensory overload, you're trying to stay engaged with your spouse, but you're not, So we decided to go shopping. And the Ontario Mills, I remember as growing up, it was an actual mall, but it has turned into an outlet mall.
Yeah, more outlet style.
So Lisa's having a blast. I mean, we're walking into every other store, it felt like at times, although I know we weren't. But Elisa's like, oh, shoe store, this store, this store. So, hey, for me, I was just like, you know what? There's no kids. I'm not having to wrestle with the kids or make sure that they're around. Go for it. We actually found a really cool shirt for me at Nordstrom Rack, so worked out okay. But as we're walking around, it's getting closer to 9 o'clock.
About 8:30.
8:30-ish. And at this point, I'm hungry. I'm hungry. And in the back of my mind, I'm going, we got these darn body paints in our luggage. We got this black light sitting there in our luggage. Let's get this thing going. I'm starting to fade here from traveling. I actually got up that morning and did a bike ride, which for me is energizing. It actually helps me to keep going. But at the same time, I was just starting to start to fade here. And so we go, all right, let's go to the Improv. We'll go watch that show and then we'll go. Well, we get to the Improv, which is on the other side of the mall. There's a line. I mean, there's just this huge line.
There's probably 100 people.
At least
120 people in line.
And it's like you got to buy yourself, get in, and then a 2-item purchase. And I'm thinking, you know what? By the time we get everybody in there, start watching the show, before we even get served, I'm like, forget it. Let's go find something else. So as we're walking back to the hotel, Elisa's searching some places. Cool. We find an Outback Steakhouse right next door to us. Jump over there. Oh, food. Now I can think again. And many of you can relate. It's just like, oh, okay. So we get back to the room though. And in my mind, I'm still going, all right, we're going to try these paints.
And I'm exhausted. I'm like, I just want to watch the highlights from March Madness. I want to just chill.
We had a nice leather couch next to the bed. Yes, so it was a really cool room.
Hanging out on the couch. And so he turns on this black light and there's no light coming out of it. Or well, I won't say none, but not enough to really be wowed by the body paints.
Right.
And so, he's all like, well, let me take the batteries out, and all of a sudden he's on a mission to make this black light work.
Oh, I'm on a mission because in my mind, I'm going, we're having sex tonight. I don't care that it's already 10:30. It's like, we're having sex tonight because I brought this black light and these body paints and I want to use them. And you're not using them in the morning type of deal because there's too much light coming in and it's not dark enough.
Right. So, yeah, because that's what I said. I'm like, let's just do it in the morning. He's like, you can't do it in the morning. It's daytime. And he says, hold on. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out to the car and I'm going to charge it in the car.
Well, I wasn't going to charge it.
Or you were going to see if it worked or something.
Right.
I wasn't even paying attention because I'm sitting there thinking, that's a lot of energy going into making this black light work, and then there's some kind of, oil or something in there that he still can't figure out where that's coming from, but he's like, I can't figure this out. And he's like pulling all the batteries out and wiping them all down with towels. And then he's like, all right, I'm going out to the car. And so he goes out to the car and he comes back in and I don't know. It works in the car. Why isn't it working? And I'm just sitting there going, And so we get enough of a light to see that, yes, the body paints do in fact work. Mm-hmm. They do glow in the dark. We tried it on my foot, very romantic, the foot. And finally he's just like, it's not going to work. I said, okay. And so then he curls up on the couch and he's like, so are we going to have sex? And honestly, at this time, all I want to do is close my eyes. And I want you all to keep in mind that this was a Saturday. So this was a bonus day. This is not a Alisa's rejecting Tony type of thing. Bonus days can go either way. And if the black light body paint experience wasn't working, I didn't have that much energy to actually have sex.
Right. And by this time, too, I was frustrated and starting to fade from the day. But like many of you, you've planned something. You've planned it. You want it to work. You want to see it to fruition. And
it wasn't happening.
It wasn't happening. And just as we titled this episode, when things go wrong, as they sometimes will. Well, this was one of those instances where things go wrong and they sometimes will. And it did. And it was no fault of our own. But this darn black light just wasn't working with us.
Wasn't cooperating with Tony's sex drive.
It wasn't at all. And just, I'm at this state where it's like, it has to work. We got to get this thing to work. And eventually it came to that point where I just go, it's just not going to. And Alisa, like she said, she was tired. I was really starting to get tired. I wasn't necessarily frustrated, but I put some good effort into trying to make this thing work, this black light work. I mean, I was walking down the hall to my car because it's really interesting. It has a car adapter, but it doesn't have an adapter that you would plug into the wall. So I'm running to the car, turning the car on, putting it in the plug adapter, seeing that it works. Realize that even when I stop the car and turn it off, that it still has this really good glow to it.
We should have just had sex in the car.
No. Not there. No. And so it just came to the point where I was just going, oh, all right, this isn't going to happen. And to force the situation isn't going to do us any good. And so at that point, in my own self, I personally had to just go, you know what? Alisa's right on this. Tonight is just not going to happen. And sometimes that's tough to do. Sometimes that is really, really tough to do because we built up so much in our own mind that when it doesn't happen, we get really frustrated. We feel turned down. We feel let down. You even may have felt, like, gosh, everything we try to do, it never works out. And I'm here to tell you that we all get there. That we all have those moments in our marriage when things don't work out. But here's what we really did that I think many of you can do when a situation like this arises. We looked at each other and just said, you know what? This just isn't going to happen. We're in a hotel. We don't have kids around. So let's make sure tomorrow morning, let's get a good night of rest. And tomorrow morning, let's make sure that we are able to make love.
And that's what we did, and it was one of those, like there wasn't any hostility because we had the conversation before we went to sleep, just like, okay, what's our plan? This one fizzled, Tony, like he said, he wasn't mad. I mean, there was some frustration that I think, he'd probably invested 45 minutes in making this work. Could have been sleeping. But I just said, you know what, we'll do it in the morning. Mm-hmm. That's okay. I mean, we still have time without, by ourselves, without the kids. We don't have to be to your parents' house till the afternoon. We're in no rush. But if we've slept, we'll be in a much better place. So, we get up the next morning and he goes to the bathroom and I get naked and, surprise, he comes back to bed and I'm naked under the covers. Okay, well, that works. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, ladies, sometimes if you just would take off your clothes under the covers and just surprise him, you want to talk about taking the lead? He gets surprised every time you're naked in bed. I know my husband does. He's like, oh, no clothes. No clothes. And it was great. Mm-hmm. But it's because we talked about it as opposed to, and I am going to take us back to those anniversaries in Montana.
Yes, please do.
So the very first year that we were in Spokane, I had only been in Spokane for a month. This is back in 2001, right after the 9/11 attacks. I moved out right after that. And maybe not even a month. It must have been just a couple of weeks if I came out after 9/11.
Yeah, maybe even a couple of weeks.
Tony had been out there for a couple of months, and our anniversary, October 5th, comes around. And Tony's talked to these guys that he's working with and, go to the hot springs in Montana. Okay, so we're going to the hot springs. I have no idea. I mean, I still crack up when I first looked at the state map, the courtesy tourism state map, and it says Montana, home of 900,000 smiling faces. And I'm sitting there looking at Tony going, most of the cities I've lived in have had, the major metropolitan areas have had over 900,000 people. Where are we going? And for all of you that live in Montana, holy cow, you have a beautiful state. I'm just not used to being in a place that's so sparsely populated. Mm-hmm. And so we're driving. We actually go to Hot Springs, Montana. And Hot Springs, Montana probably has just a couple hundred people in the entire place. I mean, there's nothing big there. Yeah. And so we've got this, little hotel in the middle of Hot Springs. And, my wonderful husband did actually splurge for the room where we didn't have to share a bathroom. I mean, it was our anniversary and all, so that was a nice little bonus. But we're there, and the entire rest of the hotel, I mean, granted, it's probably like a 10-room hotel, has been overtaken by a wedding party. So even as we're laying in bed the night of our anniversary, there is a raging party outside of our window. We had actually, earlier that night, we heard so much going on that we went downstairs and became part of the wedding party when they were doing their kind of like reception thing. But I remember sitting here going, that's not really what I planned on for my anniversary. Like, that's not the romantic getaway weekend for two. And then we did it the next year. Tony found another hot springs the next year. But the next year I was pregnant. And here's the funny thing. Pregnant women are not advised to go into hot springs. We missed that part somewhere along the way. But when we showed up at the hotel, they're like, you really can't go in the water. I was like, oh, fabulous. There's another wedding at the second hot springs, which we become part of. And here in Southern California, you're not allowed to smoke inside. I mean, they just, like all the restaurants everywhere, there's no smoking. Montana at that point in time, 10 years ago, did not have the same rules. So here I am pregnant and we're in the restaurant and there's, people smoking. And I'm like, oh, this is not good. And I will never forget our even better. We go to take a shower.
Well,
the next morning.
And here sometimes when things just do not work out. I mean, this hotel, the bed, oh my gosh. You probably have done the same thing where you've gone to a hotel, you're excited about going, you roll in, the outside looks decent, you're excited about it, you roll into your room, and you're like, okay, this will work. We can make this work. You're like, okay. And this is my thought process when I'm going through this, because I'm sort of like, it's sort of, but we'll make it work. I sit on the bed, and no kidding, it is just like all lumpy, and on one side, and the other side there's like a dip in the middle of it, and I'm just going, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
And keep in mind that I am 7 months pregnant.
Yeah, and Alisa's 7 months pregnant. So it's October. It's Lolo Hot Springs is where we're at.
The hot springs was amazing. Like, I wish I could have gone in because they're hot springs.
It was beautiful. Yes.
Gorgeous.
And the reason I picked this place too, because I was on a huge Lewis and Clark kick, and Lolo Hot Springs is where they wintered before they were able to actually make it to the Pacific Ocean. I mean, this is the hot spring where Lewis and Clark came through, wintered.
Huge historical significance.
Yeah. So that was, again, something for me. I was just like, oh, this is so cool. But it wasn't. I mean, we get up the next morning to go take a shower, and no kidding, this shower is just like dripping water. There's no pressure. There's I don't even think there's hot water coming. I'm just going, oh,
because apparently it was something about it was routed through the hot springs, and yeah, and then we go and have breakfast because I've got to eat because I'm pregnant, and Tony's like, I'm good, I just want to go home, and I'm like, no, eat, and so we think omelet. What can happen to an omelet? Well, we're used to having, like, if you order a cheese omelet, the cheese is inside the omelet. And
it's usually like grated cheese?
Usually, but not always. I mean, you can use. Anyway, so Tony gets this omelet, and it just has like 3 slices of American cheese on top. Like, just laying there on top. And he's just looking at me like, I should have just ordered the toast.
And it wasn't even like it was melted.
No, it was melted.
No.
Yeah, it was. But all this to say, sometimes when things go wrong, you're going to have fabulous stories to tell friends and family later on, because we tell our kids about these trips and they're like, really? Or we laugh about it with friends, because everybody has those anniversary trips where, you've put all of this energy and whatnot into it, and then something fizzles. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a lumpy bed or a shower that doesn't work, or, you try the black light and it doesn't work. Or like for us, I mean, we had 2 anniversaries in a row that we attempted hot springs. By the way, Tony is banned from searching out hot springs. So even if you have a fabulous one, please don't tell him about it. But we end up in other people's weddings.
No, tell me about those hot springs. I want to check them out.
No.
Here's the thing, though. Those 2 that happened years ago, we took those times where it didn't work out, and it really and honestly ruined us for days. Like, we could not connect for days, if not weeks. And it was mainly because Alisa and I would point the finger at each other. So how often, when something doesn't work out, are you pointing the finger at your spouse? Something to really think about. Because, see, that's where the transformation has happened and changed. From then to now. See, Saturday didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Didn't work out at all the way I wanted it to. I was bummed that the paints weren't really glowing that well. I was bummed that the black light wasn't working. I was bummed that, we'd worn ourselves down to a point where we weren't going to be able to make love. But the difference is that night, we still went to bed with smiles on our faces. We still went to bed going, I'm in love with you, and tomorrow's another new day. Mm-hmm. And there was no grudge held. There was no, I'm mad at you. There's no, if you would have checked this sooner or anything of that nature. Where before, there were those grudges. And it got brought up again and again. So where are you when something doesn't work out the way you want it to in your marriage? Think about that. Because that's where the transformation comes in for you, for your spouse, and for your marriage.
And it's a gradual thing. I mean, these 2 hot spring stories that we're telling you guys, that happened in 2001, 2002. Mm-hmm. We were younger and dumber then. And I say that not to insult youth. I say that because, 10 years later, we've done a lot of growing up in our marriage. There's been a lot of wisdom gained over the years from saying, you know what? Is that a battle worth fighting? Is it worth building this up into some kind of crazy, well, you should have, or I didn't, or it wasn't my responsibility? You blow it into this big ugly, and you miss out on the opportunity to say, you know what? How do we make this better? How do we solve this problem? Okay, so we've got a black light that doesn't work, and we're exhausted. What's the solution here?
Right.
Now if we went to the hot springs, we would probably just laugh and say, hey, can I catch the bouquet with these weddings? Or we would have said, you know what, let's go hop in the creek. If we're not going to shower in the hotel, we would have handled those experiences 10 years ago so much differently if they were happening today. And I think you all need to give each other a little bit of grace. Not everything that happens wrong is someone's fault. Sometimes things just don't go right. There was nothing Tony could have done about that black light. I honestly think that even if he had checked it earlier, we still would have had the same problem. And as far as exhausting ourselves, that happens after a day of travel and spending time with your families and, making sure the kids are situated and, just all the car time. That probably wasn't our best choice to say that we were going to do it then, because we already knew driving from Tony's brother's house that we were tired. We had that conversation in the car. So sometimes you have to adjust your expectations.
Right. And we're just sharing because we learn along the way, right? Hindsight is 20/20. And just as Alisa brought up, we probably should have just sat there and just said, you know what? Let's just take that off the table. Let's just take it off the table and not worry about it. But again, hindsight is 20/20. We tried and it didn't work out the way we should have, or we would have liked it to work out. In the end, though, this is where it's awesome for you. Because when you get to this point where you can go, you know what? It didn't work out. Let's laugh it off. Let's go to bed. We'll get up tomorrow morning. We'll try again. That's where the win is. That's where the win is for you. When you as a couple can come together and just go, it's all good. No grudges are held. No anger, no angst. We're going to just move on and let the past go. Mm-hmm. And that's where the win is. Because yesterday, when we got up after we made love, it was fun. It was laughable at breakfast. It's laughable even now when we talk about it. But we had fun with it. We tried something new. We tried to do something different. And I think that's a win as well. Are you willing to sometimes come to a point to try something new? And then if it doesn't work out, be able to go, at least we tried something that we wouldn't have done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, you guys have the power to create your future. And, as we talk about that going forward, I do want to share one thing with you that's going to be coming up here in just over a month. Create Your Life Blueprint. The group session is going to be starting May 2nd. I just want to ask you to think with me, because some of you may be struggling to communicate with your spouse. You're having the same conversations over and over again, and you're not really digging deeper past that surface level. You're talking about work and the kids and, who's got what on their to-do list, or you're just distracted. Some of you, Facebook goes off and you're distracted by that, or, your favorite reality show is on, or it's like, the shiny object is just bouncing all over the place and you're distracted with your spouse, or you're just not connecting the way you want to. And what I'd invite you to do is to hop on over to createyourlifeblueprint.com. You can sign up there to be notified when we're launching the program. We're going to be doing some teleseminars so you can learn more about it. And this is a way for you to dig really deep into your relationship, to create the relationship that you want to have. And so I'm excited to be working with you. And I also want to throw this out there as a special to our listeners. And I know some of you have already taken me up on this, but we do 20-minute phone consultations. If you want to talk to us about what's going on in your relationship, send us an email, and either Tony or myself we'll follow up with you on that, just to really dig deep in that phone call with what's going on and where we might be able to assist you in the future. So you can send us an email at info@oneextraordinarymarriage.com, or you can give us a call on the listener call-in line, 858-876-5663, and let us know if you're interested in that, so that we can be of service to you.
Yeah. All right, you guys. So this week, you're trying something new. Is it going to fizzle out? Does it not work? How are you going to act? How are you going to react? Don't let it mess up your marriage for days or weeks to come. Talk about it quickly. Put it under. Let it go quickly, and then move on. Because when you do that, you're going to be able to connect tomorrow at a deeper level, just as Alisa and I did this weekend. You guys have a fantastic week. We love you, and we can't wait to be with you next week.